We've got more information than ever about the future plans for Star Wars and the connective storytelling that they are focused on doing that is very similar to the MCU. Buckle up, Star Wars fans. We've got a ton to break down here. What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. Use your force powers to smash that like button and let's get right into this info. Holy crap, this is awesome. This absolutely blew my mind when someone brought it up to me. This is a report that is confirming or corroborating a lot of the stuff that I've been talking to you guys about for the past couple of months. The thing that I've been referring to as the Star Wars MCU.
Move this man!
People still absolutely hate that name. It's pretty wild. I can't believe you guys hate that name that much. Why? So let's talk about this report. It's coming from lrmonline.com. And to be honest with you, I've never heard of this website. I'm not really familiar with them, but a lot of people are talking about this. And again, because it's sort of representative of a thing I've been talking about for months, I have to get into this, okay? So they're talking about how sources from Lucasfilm have told them some very interesting things about Star Wars future plans on Disney+. I'm going to read right from their article. It says right here, according to my source at Lucasfilm, the plan is to create a universe where all the shows will be connected with a central storyline. One big inspiration was the popular Game of Thrones series. I know it's a weird comparison, but let me explain. Instead of making one epic Game of Thrones show, it'd be like if each family had their own show with a central storyline that spills over into the others. They go on to say the shows will be overseen by none other than Dave Filoni, who has successfully adapted Star Wars to the small screen, starting with the Clone Wars, Rebels, and The Mandalorian. We all knew they were grooming Filoni for big things, and this suit of shows is exactly what it was. Below is the initial lineup of the live-action shows that Lucasfilm plans to tie together. And their list of shows includes The Mandalorian, Ahsoka show, Boba Fett show, Ezra Bridger / Grand Admiral Thrawn show, and a new character show. Now, I think it's important to note that in the article, they talk about the Kenobi series more or less being an isolated thing, which makes sense because of the time period they are supposedly adapting, and also the fact that that show was developed way before this new Star Wars, Game of Thrones, Star Wars MCU idea came to them or was at least executed. And the same thing goes for the Cassian Andor show, although I do believe there's some room for some overlap there because of where it takes place in the timeline. It's probably not going to fit perfectly with what they are doing with the connective tissue between these shows. Okay, so that's what's officially in the report. Now I want to talk about everything I heard from behind the scenes and how this new information kind of lines up with that and just what I am thinking of this whole process. When I was told about Lucasfilm's changes moving forward with the Star Wars properties, I was specifically told that the connective tissue between the different shows, movies, comics, and novels was a big priority for Lucasfilm. I was told that Lucasfilm understood that they had made mistakes with that in their first phase of Star Wars movies, books, and comics, etc., and that they were learning from that mistake and looking to change things moving forward. I was also told specifically that this comes from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that they were learning from what Marvel had done and the success that Marvel had over their 10 plus years of their connected cinematic universe. They were looking to emulate things over from Marvel. Now, this is not just Feige coming over to produce a movie, but they were actively having discussions with people at Marvel, trying to reverse engineer why it was working so well for them. I was literally told that it had to do with the MCU. And so I find it really interesting that they would bring up Game of Thrones in this article, that the source would specifically bring up Game of Thrones as being the model or a big piece of where they took this inspiration from. That is kind of odd to me. I mean, I think maybe it's just because it's television. Like maybe that's a part of why they're making it Thrones, because it's, you know, television to television. That's a little bit better of a one versus one. And also it's possible that they're really just trying to depict to you that it's one singular story that's being told, but like these different shows will show that more intimate thing. Game of Thrones had an incredibly large cast and a bunch of different stories that were all told separately and then all tied together at the end of the series in, what most fans consider to be a really not high quality way. But essentially, maybe that's what they're trying to say, that this is a singular story being told, and how the individual characters or groups of characters deal with what's going on in the overarching story. That is going to be what happens in their individual shows. However, I want to just honestly ask you guys, what do you think about that? Is the Game of Thrones reference better than the MCU? And do you maybe understand why I was just referring to the MCU? Because honestly, I was referring to it because that's what was told to me, that Lucasfilm was looking directly at the MCU. This Game of Thrones thing is weird. Now, there's another aspect to this which I've tried to be really open and honest with you guys about, and that is that there's this idea of doing this thing on Disney Plus and doing it much sooner than I thought they actually would. So when I was hearing all of this stuff about Lucasfilm's big plans, I was thinking it was going to be happening in the 2022 movies and beyond, that this was something Lucasfilm was gearing up to do for future Star Wars content years down the road, and they were sort of road mapping that and figuring out the plans right then and there. And I also was told that this was going to work in conjunction with what Dan and Dave were doing with their series of movies until they walked away. Additionally, I was told that that plan was still in place and that they would like to either bring Dan and Dave back to the project once they were done working with Netflix, or plug in another big creator into that same model, doing very similar type things with a lot of the groundwork that was created by Dan and Dave for this connective tissue moving forward. And so quite honestly, it totally surprised me, the speed at which they started to do this stuff and the fact that they're doing it on Disney Plus. And I was also told that Lucasfilm was having trouble bringing in a big name to fill those shoes and to play ball with what they want to do with the future movies, which is, partially why I felt like, okay, there's got to be some problems there. I mean, that in and of itself is a problem, but the fact that they can't sign this big this big talent is indicative of maybe larger brand problems for Star Wars. But either way, I'm absolutely pumped that it's happening way faster, that it's happening on Disney Plus, and that Dave Filoni is the guy that is going to create all of this and tie it all together. It's like the perfect job for him. Now, if we look at the slate itself, and what they're really talking about here is only the live action stuff. Okay, so they're talking about Mandalorian, the Ahsoka show, an Ezra Bridger and Thrawn show, which we had heard rumors of, and then an unnamed character show. That's all the live action stuff, but it's also going to tie into the animated stuff. Pretty sure that the Mandalorian season 2 cameo with Ahsoka and with other live action characters that are adapted from Rebels, that appearance is actually going to spin into the Rebels sequel series, which is that animated show. So at least part of this is going to also take place in animated shows, perhaps even comics, novels, and things like that. But the baseline connective tissue in that big story is going to take place with all these live action shows. And I mean, what a fantastic thing. Like, at this point, I'm just going to get pure speculation. Okay, this is pure speculation here, but we've even been talking about this on live streams. Like the other week, I sat down with Lord Callus and we talked about the possibility of this expanded universe with Thrawn as the main villain, or Thrawn playing a big part, which sort of mirrors Heir to the Empire and the original expanded universe trilogy of books and stories that took place after Return of the Jedi, okay? And so The Mandalorian, Mando, and Baby Yoda, what a perfect set of characters to tie into some big crazy story that's going on in the years between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. Same thing with Ahsoka, and we've spoken at great length on what kind of an impact Ahsoka could have on that time period and for Force sensitives moving forward. Now, Boba Fett is a really interesting one because I'm not really sure how Boba Fett's going to tie into all of this, but if his story and his single show is going to play a big role in this live action universe, then it looks like they found a way to weave Boba into this story in a really interesting and important way, and I'm all for it. You guys know I'm a huge Boba Fett fan, so I'm all for that. Now, the Thrawn and Ezra Bridger show. Wow, what a weird thing, man. I really don't know what to think about that. This could be a live action interpretation of what Ezra and Thrawn were doing right after they leave with the Purgles, right? After the Battle of Lothal. That could be it, or it could be something else. Perhaps these two have actually come to really respect each other and work together, and there could be a singular outside threat that they are all facing. And that's really where I want to take the discussion. Because if they're really building sort of a live action sort of Star Wars MCU over on Disney Plus, they need to build towards their Avengers. Even in the example that they give of Game of Thrones, all of those different stories and characters all go out and they do their own things. They're all battling and being affected by big events within the timeline, but then they all come back together at the end. That's kind of the whole point. And so it would be really interesting if they did the same thing with these Disney Plus shows. In fact, I see no reason as to why they wouldn't. And so, some of the rumors we've heard about the Rebel sequel series having to deal with threats in the unknown regions, something akin to the Yuuzhan Vong, whether it is the Rakatan Infinite Empire, or whether it's the Grisk, who might be the new Vong, or something to that effect. There could be this big outside threat that will cause all of these different characters that will have their own live action stuff to all eventually team back up in an epic struggle against that outside force. That would be freaking amazing. And then the last thing that I want to discuss as a possibility here is that Dave Filoni could be doing this and could be figuring this out on Disney Plus, and this could be sort of an experiment for Disney to see not only how this works and resonates with fans, but also how well Dave executes this. I think he's got the perfect pedigree for it, but we just have to see, right? And so if this man perfectly executes this, then I think you give him even more control moving forward, and he could literally become the Kevin Feige of the Star Wars MCU and everything that's going on with Star Wars, much like we've been saying he should be for years and years and years. And when I look at the track this dude is on and how Kathy Kennedy is setting him up with these little like step ups to get to that path, I can kind of interpret this move by them to sort of giving him a big chance to step into that role eventually. The amount of experience and things that he will learn doing this is going to be crazy and give him a very valuable skill set to maybe eventually do it on an even bigger scale. But that's it, guys. That's the report. That's how it lines up with everything that I have heard from behind the scenes, and then some speculation on how I think this could happen and why it would be so freaking cool. But I, of course, want to know what you think about all of this, so let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And now let's shout out Billy Poot. Yes, indeed, Greedo is a Rhodian. Shout out to you, Billy, and interesting name you've got there. And now let's ask another nerd card question before we get out of here. I want to know, what is the name of Grand Admiral Thrawn's personal Star Destroyer in the new Disney canon? Answer that question in the comment section below. If you absolutely need more nerd content in your life, click or tap over there to watch some more of our videos, or come on by our live streaming channel where we live stream all the time. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.